Hello everyone and welcome to sqadia.com. Today's lecture on physiology is posterior pituitary hormones. So let's get on with the lecture. Now, I have already discussed about the posterior pituitary, both the anatomy and some functions in the previous lecture. You can watch the complete lecture on pituitary and hypothalamus. Now, as for the posterior pituitary, we have to first look at both the structural and the functional anatomy of both the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. The reason being that posterior pituitary is basically an extension of hypothalamus. Embryologically speaking, it is formed by the invagination of third ventricle floor into the anterior pituitary area. So it is basically part of the diencephalon. So the anterior or the forebrain has similar tissue and functions relating to the posterior pituitary. Now, anterior pituitary, on the other hand, is a different story. It is formed from the Rothk's pouch, which is basically an evagination of the pharyngeal wall. So, both the anterior and the posterior walls have lobes, have different embryological origins. The posterior being an extension of the brain. So now, being an extension of the brain, we can look at the functional anatomy that this here is the hypothalamus, and a hypothalamus is an area found at the floor of the brain containing a variety of nuclei. Now, as for the pituitary gland, there are two nuclei that are very important. Now, these nuclei are one, the paraventricular nucleus, the second being the supraoptic nucleus. Now, both of these nucleus are important because posterior pituitary releases two hormones, and each nucleus produces, synthesizes, and releases one of those hormones. Now, there are certain cells in these nuclei that are known as the magnocellular cells. Now, they are known as the magnocellular cells because they have larger cellular body than the other neuronal cells. And because they have a larger cell bodies, they are able to produce the peptides which are released as hormones from the posterior pituitary. They are both synthesized and secreted in large amounts if there is a need for that. That's why they have a larger cell body. And because these magnocellular bodies have larger cell bodies, they also have large extending axons. And these axons extend from the nuclei all the way into the infundibulum, that is the stalk that connects the pituitary gland with the hypothalamus, all the way to the cells of the posterior pituitary. Now, this is done that via these axons extending into the posterior pituitary. Now, these posterior pituitary cells have two peculiarities to them. One, they contain a certain plexus, and that plexus has fenestrations or holes in them. So whenever the axons or the end of these axons releases these hormones, they are directly involved into the systemic circulation. So the plexus, which is found both at the anterior and the posterior pituitary, is not part of the blood-brain barrier. It lies outside of it. So whenever hormones are secreted by the end of the axons into the circulation, they are not inhibited by the blood-brain barrier. They are secreted right into the systemic circulation. Now, this plexus then comes together and forms the hypophyseal vein. And the hypophyseal vein then integrates into the cerebral veins, and these cerebral veins then join the other network of the tributaries. And that tributaries then come into play into the heart, and then they are released all over the body through the pumping of the heart. So as you can see that there is a direct release of hormones from both of these nuclei into the pituitary vein and the resulting plexus that is found here. There is no barrier, the blood-brain barrier does not exist here. Now, once these hormones are released, Now, these hormones being that oxytocin is released by the paraventricular nucleus, and there is ADH or the other hormone or the antidiuretic hormone that is released by the supraoptic nucleus. Now, oxytocin, when released, affects two of the main organs, one being the uterus and the other being the mammary gland. Now, the supraoptic nucleus, like I said before, releases the ADH hormone. ADH stands for the antidiuretic hormone. The other name for this hormone is vasopressin. Now, vasopressin hormone is more physiologically accurate because antidiuresis is its primary effect, but it's not its only effect. So, vasopressin, speaking both physiologically, embryologically, and evolutionarily, is a more correct term. But since at an undergraduate level, antidiuresis is the major effect of vasopressin, it is most commonly known as the ADH or the antidiuretic hormone. Now, diuresis is a function where the loss of the water in the urine is extensive. So whenever there is large amount of urine produced, that system or that condition is termed as diuresis. And this hormone, the antidiuretic hormone, conserves or reverses this function. It inhibits diuresis and it does not form a more diluted urine. It results in a concentrated urine. And it achieves this effect by affecting on the kidneys. Now, how it does affect the kidney, where affects, we will discuss that in much more detail in the resulting slides in the upcoming sections. Now, as for the release of both the oxytocin and ADH, there are certain terms and regulation that you must be aware of. The first one being that both oxytocin and the ADH are nonapeptides. Now, nonapeptide means that they have 9 peptides in them, that they are composed of 9 amino acids. Both oxytocin and ADH, they are composed of 9 amino acids, making them an oligopeptide. The only difference is that both of these have a disulfide bridge. So oxytocin and ADH are 9 amino acid oligopeptide called nonapeptide with a disulfide bridge. And both of these have glycine at their end. And when there is glycine at the end, there's always an active amino group at that end. So an active amino group at the end of these peptide is the one that is most responsible for the fast and quick action of all of these hormones. The next is the neurophysins. Now, the actual secretions which is produced by the magnocellular cell bodies by both the Golgi complex and the endoplasmic reticulum, which is found in the cell bodies of the magnocellular cells, they actually form and secrete what is known as neurophysins. There are two neurophysins. The neurophysin 1 is for the oxytocin, while neurophysin 2 is for the ADH. Both have the same structure except that neurophysin 2 has an additional glycoprotein attached to it. Now, whenever there is a need for the excretion of either oxytocin or ADH, these neurophysins come down the exoplasm into the end of the axons, and at the end of the axons they form a certain body, and that body is known as the Herring's body. Now, whenever there's a need for the release of the hormone, an action potential travels from the cell body till the end of the axons, and because of this action potential, there's an influx of calcium. And because of the influx of the calcium, these Herring bodies containing the neurophysins start to release them. And as the neurophysins are released, they are both cleaved. So the neurophysin 1 is converted into oxytocin, and neurophysin 2 is converted into vasopressin or ADH by their cleavage. So basically both oxytocin and vasopressin are basically found in the structure of neurophysins, and when they are cleaved, they perform their function, and they're cleaved right after they are secreted. So hearing bodies are also known as the neurosecretory bodies because they only perform secretions whenever there is an axonal excitation, like an action potential.